Cells for year 7 and 8.
All living organisms are made of cells. An organism is basically just a living thing. Cells are the smallest unit, so the smallest thing that makes up an organism. Cells are really small and we can't see them with the naked eye. So we use a microscope and this magnifies the image. Structures that are found in the cell, so parts of a cell, are called subcellular structures. So we've got animal cells and we've got plant cells. To help you remember parts of an animal cell, use remember, never call mum crazy. Ribosomes are where proteins are made. The nucleus controls the cell and it contains genetic information, DNA. The cytoplasm is a jelly-like substance where chemical reactions take place. In the mitochondria, there's a chemical reaction called respiration which takes place. Respiration releases energy that the organism can use. The cell membrane's a bit like a door to the cell. It controls what substances enter and exit the cell. Now the plant cell's also got all of these subcellular structures that an animal cell has got, but also has 3 extra parts. Use violins can't clap to help you remember these. The vacuole is filled with cell sap, which helps keep the cell rigid and it supports the plant. The cell wall is made of cellulose, which helps to give the cell support and strengthens the cell. The chloroplasts contain a green pigment which is called chlorophyll, and chlorophyll absorbs light energy that's needed for photosynthesis. A specialized cell is a cell that's got specific adaptations or features that make it specialized to do its job. So basically, just that cell has got that one specific job, and in order to do that job well, it has specific features or adaptations that help it to carry out that job. Nerve cells carry electrical impulses around your body. To help them carry out that job, they're long and they're thin, and they've got connections at each end where they can join on to other nerve cells. So this way, they can pass on messages, electrical impulses around the body. Red blood cells carry oxygen around the body. They've got hemoglobin inside of them, which joins to oxygen. They don't have a nucleus, so that means they've got more space to carry hemoglobin, which means more oxygen to be transported around the body. They also have a biconcave shape, which basically means it's a bit like a disc. And this shape increases its surface area so they can carry more oxygen. Sperm cells are the male sex cells. They carry genetic material and they've got a streamlined head and a long tail. Both these adaptations help the sperm cell with movement. To help move, they obviously need energy. That energy comes from respiration, which takes place in the mitochondria. So sperm cells have lots of mitochondria to provide them with that energy. In the acrosome in the head, there's enzymes so sperm can penetrate an egg. In the leaf, we have leaf cells, which are found at the top of the leaf. Leaf cells contain loads of chloroplasts, which contain chlorophyll that help it to carry out photosynthesis. The cells are also long and thin, which makes them have a large surface area for absorbing energy that's transferred from the sun. Root hair cells absorb water and nutrients from the soil. They have a root hair which has a large surface area, and that helps to absorb more water and nutrients. Because they're found underground and we don't have any light underground, they have no chloroplasts because they don't need to carry out photosynthesis. Egg cells contain the female DNA. The cytoplasm of the egg cell contains nutrients that are needed for the embryo. During fertilization, the egg cell fuses with the sperm cell. If we want to look at something that's really small, like parts of a cell, we need to use a microscope. A microscope magnifies the image, it enlarges it, it makes it easier to see. Looking at an object like this in a bit more detail is called an observation. You need to know the steps for looking at an object, so observing an object using a microscope. First, you're going to move the stage to its lowest position. Then you're going to put the object that you want to view, now we call that the specimen, onto the stage. Whenever you're using a microscope, make sure you remember you always start with the lowest objective lens first. To look at something through a microscope, you use the eyepiece. So you look through the eyepiece and you adjust, which basically means you turn the coarse focusing wheel until you can see your object. Now the coarse focusing wheel is the one that helps to move the stage up or down. So now you're able to actually see the object, but you want to see it in a bit more detail. You want to see it so it's a bit more clearer. This time you're going to adjust the focus using the fine focusing wheel, and then repeat these steps using a higher magnification objective lens. There's also 2 really important bits you need to remember when you're looking at something under a microscope. The object needs to be thin so that light can pass through it. Before you actually put the object under the microscope, we need to use a stain, which is basically a coloured dye. This helps to make the object or subcellular structures that you're looking at easier to see. Respiration is a chemical reaction that takes place in the mitochondria. In order for respiration to take place, your cells need oxygen and glucose. Respiration also produces a waste product that's called carbon dioxide. Now we obviously need these substances, but we also need to get rid of some of these substances too. Substances move in and out of cells by a process called diffusion. When I'm talking about substances, I mean things, so things like glucose and things like oxygen. Diffusion is the movement of particles from an area of high concentration, so that means where there's loads of them, to an area of low concentration, which basically means where there's not a lot of them. Diffusion also happens in plant cells. Plant cells carry out a process which is called photosynthesis. For photosynthesis to happen, they need water. Plants get this water through diffusion. The water diffuses into the plant via the root hair cells. Basically, the soil has got a high water concentration and the root hair cells got a low water concentration. And we know diffusion is the movement of particles from an area of high concentration where there's loads of them to an area of low concentration where there's not that many of them. So the water is going to go from the soil, which is the high water concentration, into the root hair cell, which is a low water concentration, via diffusion. Now, you also need to know what happens if a plant doesn't get enough water. When the plant doesn't have enough water, the vacuole shrinks and the cell becomes floppy, and in turn, the plant wilts. Now, the opposite to that is if the plant gets too much water. If the plant's getting too much water, that means that the water fills up inside the vacuole. This puts pressure onto the cell wall. This makes the cell a lot more rigid. unicellular organisms. In the word unicellular, notice the prefix uni. What I mean by prefix is a word that's placed before another word, so uni is a prefix in unicellular. The word uni means one, and cellular for cells, so unicellular organism is an organism that's made up of only one cell. Now if we look at multicellular organisms, multi means many or more than one, so multicellular organisms are made up of lots of cells. Today we're going to focus on two unicellular organisms, amoeba and euglena. Amoeba don't have a fixed shape. They're found in saltwater, freshwater, wet soil, and sometimes inside animals. Amoeba have a cytoplasm, cell membrane, and a nucleus. The nucleus controls growth and reproduction. Amoeba can make parts of their body move in the direction they want to travel, and then the rest of the body follows that. So they move by changing the shape of their body. Amoeba eat plant cells, algae, and bacteria. They do this by engulfing, which is basically when they surround the food and they form a food vacuole. The food vacuole then digests the food. Amoeba reproduce by binary fission. That's when it splits itself into two cells. First the nucleus divides, then the cytoplasm divides and produces two identical cells. Euglena are found in fresh water, and just like amoeba, they contain cytoplasm and a nucleus. But euglena also have chloroplasts, which is why they look green. Because they have chloroplasts, the chloroplasts trap energy from the sun, so euglena can produce food via photosynthesis. Euglena also have an eye spot. This helps them to detect light. They also have a flagellum, which is basically a tail that spins like a propeller so the euglena can swim towards the light. But if the euglena don't have enough light to make their own food, they eat microorganisms such as bacteria and algae by surrounding them and engulfing them. They also reproduce by binary fission.